Sandra, hey, hi, how's it going?
Hello, hello. Everything's fantastic. Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you. I was really hooked on your show, Bel-Air, right from the start. I just found it to be, it's so different. I mean, I don't know how much you think about the OG Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's such a different take. I'm so interested, sort of that starting point. You know, you had Morgan, the show trailer, the concept trailer, and it does something so interesting. And now the show is, you know, it breathes on its own, it moves on its own, it picks up from the original show, but adds so much to it. So how does that feel for you? What's it like to shoot this show?
I to be on this side of it now, it's just such a huge relief that people are embracing what it is that we made. When we were on the other side of it, it was so interesting to see the arc of how the audience gravitated to the show. When people first heard this reboot was happening, it's so crazy. When we saw the Morgan Cooper trailer from 3 years ago, like, it went viral, 7 million people saw it. They're like, yes, this is what we need. And it's like such a simple idea. It's like, of course, you reboot it, but make it a drama. But then when they saw we were actually in pre-production for it, then people were like, who asked for this? No one asked for this. And then the show came out and it was like, oh my God, this is how you do a reboot. So it's been a roller coaster ride of feeling what people think they want and then what they actually get. And so all I can say is it's a relief because I grew up in real time watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's tattooed on my brain as like that TV show of what it meant to me being a kid seeing that show. So to think that we're in it now, it's like stepping through the looking glass. It's really, there are no words to really say what it feels like to be on this side of it at this point.
What's your starting point? What's your entry point into Aunt Viv? You know, someone had compared her to Michelle Obama, and you said, you know, I'm not Michelle. There's only one Michelle Obama, but you're a strong Black woman. You're a boss. It's a really amazing idea of sort of the characterization. Do you jump off from sort of the original Aunt Viv? Do you see this as sort of its own thing? What's your entry point?
Well, my entry point is I'm from the theater world. And so I'm used to looking at roles that other people have already made great. And so then you look at what they did and you think, oh, what do I want to keep and what do I want to add? So Janet Hubert and Daphne Maxwell definitely brought the heart and consciousness of the show. They're like the deep sage of wisdom, strength. They just want to lead people to their best lives. So I definitely wanted to keep that. Like those women are probably the most obvious idea of the queen of aunties in the culture. Like I don't think auntie was a thing in the culture until Fresh Prince. Like who's your auntie? And then the thing I really wanted to add, or as Morgan said, we weren't here to fit their shoes. We were here to create our own shoes. And so for me, I thought, oh, the way the writers created this new season for Aunt Viv is very different than the original, which is the original women who did it. They were already strong women. They were already in their career. They were done. And so they just got to live at a high place in society and life. And Aunt Viv is, she sort of lost a little bit and also being a follower more than a leader behind her husband, trying to be a leader in her household with the kids, but her outside persona, not so much. So the first 3 or 4 episodes, to your point, she really is sort of like a paper doll cutout of a Michelle Obama, because who else does she go to in her mind of what does a campaign wife look like if my husband's running for something? You automatically think Michelle Obama. So then she starts dressing like her, acting like her. She gets her hair done like her. And then at some point, the thing I really wanted to add in is that, but she really wanted to hold on to her roots. This woman's from South Philly, West Philadelphia. And so she wanted to hang on to that. So I like to think my version is she's still this deep, empathetic person, but she's actually much more vulnerable. I think to be a woman like me in the culture, people look at Black women as like, oh, they're so strong. Like actually the iconography of a Black woman in culture is strength. So I was interested in being like, maybe she's not so sure on who she is, which is why Hillary can say things to her and it actually hurts. She's like, oh, I did give up on my dream. Like, oh, Will, he's so in touch with his swag. Like, oh, I remember I used to be like that. So I really think a lot of the show, you see her just trying to find her footing. of strength again. And so it's
Mm.
been really delicious to play a character like that who's trying to still be calm.
Do you think that she felt like she could have it all, that maybe she gave up on something?
I think, you know, I think for her, the way I think about Aunt Viv is that she thought she could have it all. She found a great man, and she was this very passionate visual artist. And then, you know, to be an artist in general, a visual artist, any artist, but a visual artist is a very difficult road. It's a very difficult journey to have. And when she was trying to be a visual artist 15 years ago, I mean, trying to make a living was hard to come by. And you only get maybe one or two people within a decade who get to be the standout figures. And then everyone else goes hungry. So a lot of people are starving and only a few people are eating. And so she just had to make a common sense choice, which was maybe I should step back. The thing is, she could have kept painting even if she wasn't being paid for it because it
Mhm.
was her passion. But instead, she does what a lot of us do as mothers, and I'm a mother, which is you might mute a part of yourself to put all your energy, all your nurturing energy into these little people. And so now that these people are older, and Ashley's like, I guess 15 now, or 12, 13 in the show, she realizes, like, what did I do to my dream? And right now, in real time, in African American culture, visual arts is very hot. Like, you can make a living in this. There's so many more platforms where you can make a living to have an exhibit. So she's sort of looking back, and people in her life now are like, will you come back out? Like, it's safe to come play. There's places for you to play. So you're starting to see her come out and be like, can I, should I? She's like the little engine that could.
I was going to ask you that. And as a mother, your interactions with Hillary, with Coco, are so fascinating because your show doesn't ever seem to say, here's who's correct and here's who's incorrect, or here's who's more right in those interactions. And I imagine the feedback too, that people feel very differently. What do you think about that? How do you enjoy playing those scenes where, maybe Aunt Viv and Hillary are at odds with each other?
Yeah, I think it's so truthful how they've written it. You know, mom and daughter relationships can be a very difficult thing in a way, FYI. But really, what you're seeing are two generations, two different generations trying to understand each other. And I come from the same generation as Aunt Viv, where you're supposed to go to college and you get as many degrees as you can. And then when you get a job, you try to assimilate into that job. You try not to make any noise. And then maybe once you're there for a while and you've made space, then you try to create something new. You try to push the boundaries. And this new generation is not like that. This new generation is like, I don't even have to go to a job. I can create my job on
Mm.
social media, on YouTube. And also, I don't have to change or to water down my blackness to fit into mainstream. And
Mm.
it's very different than the culture I came up with. You're supposed to water yourself down, make folks comfortable. And this new
Mm.
generation is like, no, we're not here to make people feel comfortable. They need to get over their biases and let us in now. And it's just radical. And all a mom wants to do is to keep their child safe and to make sure that they can take care of themselves. So, in my viewpoint, she's making the worst decisions. And so, if you see your child making a bad decision, you might have to yell at them and say, listen, do not touch the stove. Have some common sense. And the kid is like, this is a new age stove. You can't even get burnt on it. You're like, are you crazy?
Mm. But I mean, do you know about that world? I mean, do you feel like Viv does about, influencer culture, or, what Hillary's path will be and how much she wants to actually speak up when she feels like there's the need to, when maybe it's not the most socially acceptable thing?
Yeah, I think they're both learning from each other. I think there's like that scene where she has a party at the house, the
Mm.
influencer party. And I think for the first time, Vivian starts to realize, like, oh, in a way, uh, the social media, YouTube, you can actually be artistic. You can actually use some like artful thinking in creating these little productions that these people do. And I think also she realizes, it's something to put yourself out like that. You have to have enough of sense of self to think that someone would even want to see you. Like, you have to have some sense of self and self-esteem. And Hillary has that. And
Mm.
actually, Aunt Viv doesn't have that. Aunt
Mm.
Viv, when she comes out for the first time just to be around with other artists, she's just, her whole body language is so cowered down. Like, oh, should I even be here? They have such different energy. And so it's funny, they're both becoming, but one is my character is trying to remember who she was and like how passionate she used to be, and how she used to be so authentic. And Hillary is just trying to figure out, what is my true voice? What's my true voice in the midst of all of this noise? Because social media has so much noise. So how do you stand out? How do you stay authentic? And how do you not sell out to just what's popular?
Mm. What I think is so amazing about your show is that you're not simply trying to recreate the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know, you take that as a starting point or as a touchstone, but you build off it. And you have so many interesting scenes, sequences, moments on the show. What have been some of your favorites?
Definitely, one of my favorites is when Vivian and Michael Ealy's character, who's
Mm,
Reed, the art gallerist, and my
mhm,
husband are all in my art gallery,
mm,
all in my art studio. I love that scene because it's almost like she's been outed as an artist, and like now her husband sees her art, and now this other man is forcing her to put it up for people to see it, and she feels so exposed. And so this woman who's usually so strong and poised, she's like out of her comfort zone. I love that scene so much because from the audience's perspective, I'm sure they're thinking it's only about Michael Ealy being so beautiful to look at.
mm,
But the funny thing in life is, it can be both. There's nothing like life bringing someone who's beautiful to come into your life to also acknowledge something about yourself that has been in hiding. And he comes and does both of those things. He's just blast the doors open. And in a way, I like to think like the muses know exactly what kind of bait you need to come and like enter into the new version of yourself. And somehow her muses were like, it can't just be a regular person. It has to be someone who's beautiful, who owns his art gallery. So when he says your work is important and it stands up to other great artists, she actually has to feel the weight of it. And in that scene, she says to him, like, why are you gassing me up? Like, why are you telling me I'm so great? It can't be true. And he's actually like, it is true.
mm.
That's
Well,
beautiful. I love that scene.
you got ahead of me a bit, that I was going to ask, of course, what it's like to work with Michael Ealy, but also with Adrian, that I think you'd had 3 projects previously, or this might be your
Two.
third,
This
two,
is our
and
third
then
one.
previously you weren't husband and wife, you were actually the mistress or his mistress. And now, with everyone is Twitter, really blew up when Michael Ealy appears, because he's played, maybe that homewrecker character before, or someone who might get in the middle. So what's it like to work with both of them and to play sort of that aspect of what could be maybe a triangle?
Well, I don't think ever in my life have I ever been the woman in the middle,
Mm.
on TV, that is. I mean, in real life, of course, darling. But on TV, I had never had the opportunity to play that. So it was so delicious, okay? Who doesn't want two beautiful looking men like sort of pulling after in that way? And also for women at home, like it's so much fun to see a woman being adored and sort of being fought over between two men. So I just knew the people at home were gonna love. We all knew it. We were like, oh, this is that scene. And yeah, I've worked with Adrian Holmes, who plays Uncle Phil.
Mm.
I've acted with him. We did a movie years ago for Lifetime called The Real MVP, which was a story about Kevin Durant and
Mm.
about how he really believed his mother was the real MVP. And so I played his mother from 18 to present day of what it took for her to raise this brilliant young man. And actually, Adrian comes on and he plays like the coach who coaches Kevin Durant to be like this great person. And even back then, Adrian and I had great chemistry, and we would
Yeah.
hang out off set, and we stayed in touch, and we'd been friends for years. Anytime he'd come to New York or LA, we would try to see each other. But then, literally like 2 months before we started Bel-Air, we did a pilot for Malcolm D. Lee, who just did Space Jam, and it just
Mhm.
broke all the box office records for Space Jam with LeBron James. He does this new drama series also about a family, but Nicole Ari Parker, who's actually in Sex and the City now, she plays his wife, and I come in as the mistress. And on my first day on set, I say, listen, guys, shouldn't I be married to Adrian? Like, we look like a couple. Like, what are we doing here? Okay. So when that show didn't get picked up, there's no way you would have told me that show wasn't going to get picked up. It was an incredible cast and an incredible producing team, but it didn't. But Carla Waddles, who was the showrunner for that, ended up becoming one of the producers and lead writers on Bel-Air. And
Mm,
so they were sort of like, they did look good together. Let's bring them over. So it's very serendipitous. And Michael Ealy, I've never worked with him before,
mm,
but he has such a smoldering, mysterious energy in general. To even meet him, you're always like, what is he thinking? And it's
mm.
perfect for this character. I don't have to act much because his eyes do not portray what he actually is feeling. And I think that's perfect for a role like this. But it was delicious to get to know Michael Ealy. He is a treat. And so my goal on set was just to figure out ways how to make him laugh because he can be so serious. And I'm like, come on, guy, you come out of there. I know someone funny is hiding in there. So it was fun.
So I have to hear about your experience as a New Yorker. I mean, Viv, Viv is a transplanted person as well, but Bel-Air is such a big part of the show. I mean, it's the title of the show, but you really feel that. You really feel that Bel-Air, that Los Angeles energy. So what's it like as a New Yorker to go and film a show like this?
Well, the little girl inside of me loves to go play dress up and to go be like, and I live in Hollywood and I live in Bel-Air. And the house that we have that's on the studio, but also in real life, the location that we use for our mansion just automatically makes you drop into, oh, this is my world. But I think to your point, it really works well for me that I'm from Brooklyn or that I
Mm,
live in Brooklyn. I'm originally from Florida.
mm,
But it really works well that I don't live there because I think that's how Vivian sort of feels too. Like she is not of Bel-Air, she just lives in Bel-Air. That's a very different sort of personality. I always say I feel like she's very much closer to the energy in terms of that, like a Jada Pinkett Smith. Like Jada is very much so from Baltimore, even though she might live in Calabasas, surrounded by luxury, she's very much still grounded in where she's from. And I find that very sexy and powerful. And so I bring that sort of same thing. I love California, but I mean, Brooklyn's better. Brooklyn's
yeah.
better. Also, I grew up a lot going to California as a kid, visiting my aunt and uncle. They live in the Palisades there. And I grew up going to their house, and their house was like Philip and Vivian Banks. Their house is covered in African American art. They're some of the biggest African American art collectors in the country, actually. So I
Mm.
grew up surrounded by Black artists and knowing like why they're important and what their stories are. So this was beautiful, sort of serendipity to be able to play a character like this.
I think it's so interesting too on the show that, when I think of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, it was primarily about Will, or maybe just through Will's perspective of coming in. And your show really feels like everyone on the show, all of, the performers feel like they really embody their characters so well. You don't have to necessarily use Will as your entry point. Carlton has some incredible scenes, and Ashley and Vivian and Hillary, and everybody just seems like Jeffrey. Everybody seems like they inhabit their characters so well, and there's so many strong characters. So was this like, aside from Adrian that you've talked about, was this a new group? Had you known anybody before? Are these new people that you're working with? How do you find that click so well?
I think to have our lives flipped upside down like this,
Yeah.
pun intended, uh, for us to fall into a Will Smith world like this, and Will Smith is, arguably one of the most famous movie stars in the world. It's I feel like it automatically bonds a whole group of people of being like, listen, we're all about to do this together. Let's hold on. But also, I remember our first table read, which was on Zoom. It was magnificent. And it was on Zoom. And I reached out to the actors, like I DM'd them because I didn't have their info then. And I DM'd them and like, listen, you are a star. I can't wait to work with you. And then they brought me back. It's like, me, no, you're a star. So I think what makes our chemistry is that we are truly each other's biggest fans. Like I think Jabari, I think
Mhm.
Ali Sholatin, who plays Carlton, masterful. Like I think all these, Jordan Jones, who plays Jazz, just
Mhm.
masterful. I just feel like people are really bringing such a high authenticity to the show, and they're bringing the best of themselves. And I really think that's because we love the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as much as everyone else. We're not outside of it. We're very much in it. So
Mhm.
if you're an art collector, the way you touch your paintings, the way you touch pottery, you put on white gloves and you take very good care of it. You just don't throw things down. And that's how I feel that we did with this show. We were really like, wait a minute, what's our intention in this moment? And Morgan Cooper, the creator, is very keen on intention and being direct with that intention and having care about everything.
How does it feel to have Will and James, Quincy Jones? How does it feel to have people who worked on the original show to be involved in your show?
Yeah, it's kind of mind blowing to think that any of those people are that it's crazy. We say this all the time. It's crazy to think we got cast, but then it's crazy to think that people like Will and Jada of Westbrook would look at our tapes and be like, "Yep, that is an Aunt Viv. Yes, that is a Will Smith." Like it's who comes up with this type of dream? And Westbrook and Will Smith have been just the godparents of your dreams that you'd hope to have when it comes to support. And then when it came to the premiere, they were just so overjoyed for what we've been able to do with this show. And even Will and Jada's kids, Willow and Jaden, they were so enthusiastic. Like they acted like we were celebrities. And I'm like, calm down. You're an icon living. What are you talking about? Like you are the people. So it's hard to even understand what's happening, and it's even hard to believe that the culture is enjoying it so much and that it's so successful. It's all that we could have hoped for.
What's that been like for you? What's the feedback been like, the buildup? People are really coming to your show and understanding what it is. They're understanding what Peacock is and that they're, giving it really this platform. How has that felt like for you? How's that buildup been?
I'm very grounded. I have a 3-year-old kid, so I don't tend to get starstruck. I've had a lot of high moments in my career.
Mhm.
This is definitely one of the highest pitch moments of my career.
Mhm.
But I think we're all quite grounded because when the first trailer first came out that Morgan Cooper created 3 years ago, people went crazy for it. Will Smith called him up in less than 24 hours when he first saw it. Before it even hit 10,000 views, Will Smith was already on the phone with Morgan Cooper. And, that became a viral sensation with over 7 million people seeing that. So first people loved it. And then when they found out it got greenlit and they were actually going to do the show, people hated it. And they were like, who asked for a reimagining? Who asked for a reboot? Horrible, horrible. And then the show comes out, and every Thursday through Sunday, I trend and other people on the show trend, and all of the trending is just about how much people love it. And I think the thing that really just makes me feel good is A, that people feel like I'm doing a good job as their idea of an Aunt Viv. That's all I could have hoped for. And B, I think people really feel our intention of we just wanted to show a family. This show is ultimately is just about a family that's trying to love each other, have tenderness, forgiveness, and family goes through ups and downs. But the Banks family always chooses family, and I'm just so happy to be. I feel very humbled and grateful that this role has landed in my lap, and that I get to just live in a world that exists like that, and to have it on Peacock and the way they've really taken care of the show. It's a rare thing in an actor's career to be on a show that is successful and that a network also takes care of it from the beginning. So that's how it feels to me.
I just want to ask you because I watched you and your friend from a long time ago, Ryan. You were doing like an interview with each other, and Ryan is so incredible on the end, also part of the NBC Universal family. So what's that been like for you? You've been in the game for a while, but it feels like sort of now is the time. Now is your time. How does that feel? Your progression in the industry coming to this point right now?
Yeah, I always tell people when I first started 16, 17 years ago, uh, there were no leading Black women TV shows. They just didn't
Mm.
exist. The last one was Diane Carroll. So, and that's a whole other generation. I wasn't even alive for that. And so then one day it became Kerry Washington, and at the same time Michelle Obama came on the scene.
Mhm.
When those two things happened, my career changed. Like
Mm.
all of a sudden, people were creating content intended for Black women, maybe not to be the lead, but to be the co-lead. But I remember my brain had this moment of like, no one ever trained you to be a leading lady. Like, you're supposed to be in the background. Like the Black girl who looks like me is supposed to be in the background. And then for our lives to come full circle like this just lets me know that even as that little girl who is like 10 years old, who is like, I really want to act, I feel like there was a whole culture of little Black kids like me who are like, but our story should be told. There's another story to be told. There are different types of Black people. We're not all pimps and hoes on the streets. Like
Mm.
some of us come from great families. We come from joy. It's not just trauma. And so I'm happy to be on a show that's interested in showing family, love, and tenderness. Like that too lives in the Americana experience for African Americans. But the things that sell the most are the gutter of this of our storytelling. It's the trauma instead of the triumph. So I'm just so amazed that two Black women could even have this type of opportunity. But Black women everywhere on
Mhm.
all the networks and platforms are having a moment right now. We're in the middle of like an African American renaissance artistically. And so just to be a string in that tapestry, all I can say over and over again is I am humbled and grateful. I'm just so humble and grateful to God to have this opportunity because it's
Mhm.
really beyond my own imaginations for my life.
You've been really incredible. I just want to ask you one more thing, because so many people are coming to the show really like understanding what your show is, really grabbing onto it, sort of living within the show. How have you felt about that as a viewer? Has there been any show where you've watched or experienced and you just get, I understand this, I really enjoy it?
I mean, a show. I mean, there have been movies where I
Yeah.
feel like that. And I'm sure there's shows too. Like I think about the first season of Atlanta. I was actually in
Yeah.
the first season as well. That first season was so amazing to me
Yeah.
because it's the first time I ever saw uh, African American culture, but framed in a high artistic style. Like it felt like independent film and
Mhm.
Black art came to FX. And I was like, oh, it felt like a warm, soothing bath to the soul. And I was like, yes, our work should be on a platform like that. And I just love the entire like idea behind the show. Something about it, it's like a little bit off kilter, but
Mhm.
life is off kilter. Like it just was the bullseye. And I thought that show is everything I hope to be a part of as an artist. And my episode about Juneteenth was like the
Mm.
episode that educated people that there was even a thing called Juneteenth in the African American community. So when two things like that get to cross each other, high art, great writing, and I get to be in the center of it all, oh, that's a love fest. But I had a love fest for that show even before I saw the first episode because Donald Glover is a genius.
Mm. That episode too was so incredible. Janik said what everything about that episode. It's so, and for someone like me watching it, it's so jarring and so like, oh, like, should I even be watching it? And to,
I feel the same way. Trust me. You're just
oh,
like, oh, the character I even play, you're like, oh my gosh, like, does she even know who she
yeah,
is Carlton's mother? Okay,
yeah.
like she's closer to the energy of Carlton in our show. And Janixa Bravo, I love that you know the name. That was the director, and she was the
Mm,
only female. She was the only director outside of Hero who directed that first
mm,
season. And hers was like definitely a standout in that first season. She has a beautiful artistic eye. I just love people who can take reality and put a light on it in a different way that it's almost like a chasm away from what you ever thought reality could be. It was that episode felt like a pop-up book of
yeah.
just craziness, right?
To come off the BAN episode, after just every episode being so different every single time, I couldn't
Broke
believe it.
every rule. It
Yeah,
broke every rule. And those are one of those shows when you're watching, you're like, oh yeah, why have we been trying to stick to rules? Who made up these rules? Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But it came from a place of them like really searching for some type of interesting truth. It wasn't trying to be like famous. They weren't trying to be cool. It was like obviously Donald Glover's point of view. And if you look, I remember when I went out for that and I got accepted, my people were like, oh, you're not gonna get paid much money for this. Like Donald Glover. And I'm like, stop. Have you seen a Donald Glover music video? this man, his point of view is very different. I was like, I'll do anything in Atlanta with Donald Glover because I bet you it'll be high art. And I felt so good to see that I was absolutely right.
You know, the first thing I'm going to do right after that is I'm going to rewatch that episode just to see and it hits so different every time, every one. And I can't wait to see the upcoming 2 seasons, the final 2 seasons as well. And
In Paris, I
yeah,
mean, yes, I cannot. Ooh, there's a whole Jay-Z song,
yeah.
N-word in Paris. So we're gonna see if that happens. But how it feels to be African American outside this country is a very specific thing.
Mhm.
In some ways, it feels like a vacation away from oppression. And then you turn down the wrong alley, and then it becomes like, oh, nope, nope, nope. I'm very much black. If there's a case system, I am at the bottom. Okay. But you travel to other parts of Europe, and it's like people treat me like I'm a king or a queen, and they just rebel against everything American that they do to black people. And I'm like, is this what it feels like to be white? You think I look good right now? Oh my
Mm.
gosh. If I didn't have to worry about the oppression of being black, I would be 15 years younger. But that would be unfair. And then I could be Aunt Viv because I look like I'm 20. So, it all balances out.
I just wanted to say quickly, though, that I think your show is incredible, Bel-Air, that it does break those rules as well. That, you have the existing IP, but you don't pay homage to, you really are forging your own path on the show. And I think there's so many chill moments because of it. So many moments in which I was like, I did not expect that. And I just feel that. I feel that rule breaking.
Wow. Thank you. It's always nice to be a part of, Morgan Cooper,
Yeah.
Will Smith. I really commend Will Smith that he not only took one of his prized possessions, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that really took him into rocket stardom, but that he entrusted it to like the new young generation. Morgan Cooper was
Mm.
probably 27 when he
Yeah.
made that
Yeah.
video. So to hand the keys off to another young man, it's so smart. Like Will Smith is a brilliant
Mhm.
businessman. Like he knows, like if you're going to do it, you can't give it to a 50-year-old white man in Hollywood, right? You might not even be able to give it to a 50-year-old black man. It probably should go to some 20-something-year-old kid who's like in the midst of hip hop culture now, because that's what made the Fresh Prince so amazing. It put hip hop in our lives. It really brought the mainstream. It really made hip hop mainstream for so many people. And now our show, the music is very much so a character. And depending on
Mm.
how old you are and what kind of music you listen to, you might recognize a song and it'll be some old school hip hop, or it'll be super new underground stuff. And only like a certain population of people will know it. But because of that, it rings even more true. And so I'm just so happy that Will Smith was like, inventive enough to hand the keys over to someone like Morgan Cooper. And I think he did the correct thing. He did the
Mhm.
correct thing.
And to be mixing in original cast members soon too, maybe another
That's
Aunt
right.
Viv. We'll
That's
see.
right. Yeah,
That's gonna
next week we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
can't wait. Cassandra, I want to say thank you again. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. Same here. Thanks so much for having me on.